The last time Sarah Landa joined me on the podcast, it was episode 88. It was March of 2021. And even though it doesn't feel like a lot of time has passed since then, it really has. And it definitely has in the world of SEO and AI. Today, Sarah is back on the podcast to talk to me about how, even though she was relatively slow to warm to the idea of utilizing tools like ChatGPT in the assistance of blogging and SEO, she has come to make peace with the fact that this is really kind of the new way things are done and has now started to use it in a lot of different parts of the blog creation, blog content creation process. So she is going to give us a roadmap for how you can and how you shouldn't be using AI tools to try to boost your SEO and to try to serve your ideal clients. And I feel like this is one of those episodes where if you are like a huge AI user already and you've got your workflow dialed, maybe this isn't going to be helpful for you. But if you're like me and you've been relatively slow to adopt this process because, learning another thing and trying to incorporate another thing and not being sure whether you're going to get penalized for it. These are all valid concerns. And I think that as business owners who are kind of wearing a lot of hats, it can be hard to keep up with this technology. I love the way that Sarah gives us a very actionable, very sort of easy to digest way to open ChatGPT and get started with improving your website and your SEO.
Welcome to This Can't Be That Hard. My name is Anami Tonkin, and I help photographers run profitable, sustainable businesses that they love. Each week on the podcast, I cover simple, actionable strategies and systems that photographers at every level of experience can use to earn more money in a more sustainable way. Running a photography business doesn't have to be that hard. You can do it, and I can show you how.
Sarah Landa, welcome back to This Can't Be That Hard. It has been too long, my friend. How are you?
I am good. It's so good to see you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, yeah. No, this is when you came on the show, which was, I'm going to say, was it 18 months ago? I mean, it's been a minute.
It's been a while.
Yeah. And your episode on SEO was so popular and I had so many questions and all this stuff. And so I have been meaning to get you back on the show. And then when our paths crossed again recently and we started chatting about AI and sort of the impact it has on SEO, I just, my wheels got spinning and I'm so excited to have you here to talk about this because it's such a hot topic that I know very little about.
Yes.
So I'm glad to have someone who knows what they're talking about here to guide the conversation. But for anybody who happened to miss your last episode with me or isn't familiar with you and what you do, why don't you fill us in and we'll go from there.
All right. Well, I'm an SEO strategist. I help photographers and small businesses to help get ranked on Google. And as a photographer and small business owner myself, I learned everything backwards and then had to figure out how to spin it around for myself. And then through that process, I figured out a teaching model to help others navigate the basics of SEO in a, systematic step-by-step way that makes sense for us non-technically technology inclined type of people.
Indeed. Well, and I love that. I mean, I think a lot of things like SEO and marketing and, all the business things, there's so much information out there and it can be really overwhelming to try to sift through it. And of course, that information exists on all different kinds of levels. So if you're a total beginner, trying to navigate your way forward can be really hard. And I think that as much as I try to avoid looking at photography as this like special snowflake of an industry, every industry has its own nuances and sort of specificity, whatever. And I love the fact that you come to SEO with this knowledge as a working photographer of exactly kind of, not only what works for photographers, but also how reasonable certain expectations are in terms of like, we're often the only person working in our business. So how can we make what we need to do doable in the grand scheme of all of the many things that we have on our to-do lists. So I love that you come from that angle. But I kind of want to dive right into the AI side of things. If anybody who's listening here missed my first conversation with Sarah about the sort of basics of SEO for photographers and some really great steps to getting your keywords and things like that, I highly recommend that you go back and listen to that episode, and I'll link that in the show notes. But let's take that the next step here. One of the things that we talked about a lot in our first conversation was the importance of blogging. And I know that blogging is kind of a headache-inducing word for a lot of photographers. And now there's this relatively new tool that exists out there that's free to everyone. The promise is that it can make it a lot easier, but it feels like a little bit of a landmine. Talk to me about how AI and specifically ChatGPT is changing the blogging landscape for photographers.
Well, I feel like AI is everywhere right now, and I wasn't hearing about it for a long time. Or what I was hearing was, oh, don't use it. It's not good. It's not good yet. And I wasn't using it at all. And everything I was doing was trying to teach people how to generate content organically. Mm-hmm. Everything I do is organically, organic SEO, local SEO. And I don't even know if I could pinpoint the time. It was a couple of months ago when I started hearing about ChatGPT. I mean, I think it came out in 2022. I should look up the date, but it went super viral, super fast. And I was listening to an educator talk about how to use it, and I was aghast. I was like, no, this is awful. Like, what is happening right now? But also like so curious. And I think within that same day, I did a complete 180, and I'm like, I'm going to go home and play with this, because I can't say it's awful if I've never even tried it. So I immediately started playing with it. And we don't have to get into everything that's problematic about it. I'm sure we could go off about like, are our kids going to be using this to write their papers and all the other things? It's really affected Hollywood and the publishing industry and everything. But I'm not an expert in those areas, so I'm going to stay away from that. And I just think, though, that if we can keep our, sort of cringeometer on and keep our ethical hat on and view this as a tool or an assistant and not just a cheater, like a cheater way to get around it. I think we can figure out a way to use it responsibly, because AI is not going anywhere. Right. I mean, it's everywhere. It's even like my son uses my Snapchat account. He's not allowed to have a Snapchat account, but he gets on mine and plays on it. It's in there. I mean, he has full conversations with this AI bot. And it's everywhere. I mean, you see it on your phone in predictive text. You see it in Gmail with predictive answers. I mean, and I think that was creeping in, and I didn't even realize it.
Right. It was almost like we didn't have a title for it. We were just like, oh, that's a fun little feature.
Right. I mean, we're already kind of, freaked out by the fact that we get in our car and our phone knows exactly where we're going because we go to the same place every day. Like there's all these little things that our phones are already smarter than us and predicting us that, kind of get you thinking, but you kind of brush it aside and say, okay, it's fine because I need this phone in my life. Right. But yeah, so.
Yeah. And I'm right there with you. Like I go back and forth between and I joke with my kids. It's like I'm the old lady like shaking my cane at the sky being like, "What? It's too fast. It's too much." But I know that the thing with technology is that, the genie doesn't go back in the bottle. What we have, and I'm not in the business of trying to regulate AI, thank God, because that seems like it's going to be a really challenging thing. But these tools are out there, and I do feel like there's a little bit of if you are unwilling to at least educate yourself about it, if not use it, you're ultimately going to be at a deficit in
Right.
comparison to the other people out there in your field. So
Right.
yeah. So I
You may
think
get
it's
left
good to have
behind.
these. Exactly. And I remember reading a really scary article. This is totally a side tangent, but this was back in when I was living in New York, so 2 decades at least ago, talking about the use and abuse of stimulants like Adderall and things like that among elite college, like university students, and how it was essentially at that point ubiquitous, and how the kids who were choosing not to abuse those medications were at a loss or at a deficit because they weren't able to stay awake long enough to study. And I was like, this is
Like
a messed up.
performance enhancing drugs for
Exactly,
intellectuals.
for your brain. Exactly.
Right.
And I was just like, wow, this is kind of mind blowing. And I feel like it's along those lines, although thankfully this isn't messing directly with the chemicals in our brain. So
Right.
anyway, again, tangent.
One of the scary things, though, I think about it is you're getting into the practice of using something that we don't know if it's going to be regulated later.
Right.
So if I use this now, will it hurt me later?
Right.
Because the rules are always changing.
Right.
There are SEO tactics that I would have recommended 6 months ago that I will not recommend today.
Right.
Because of Google changing their recommended guidelines. So
right.
Things are always changing. And if we use something too much, are we going to have to go back in and change it all? So I think,
right.
Be mindful and be aware and be responsible, be ethical, and don't be a plagiarist and all of those things.
Yeah, but these are good rules to live by.
Yeah, exactly.
AI or otherwise. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, good. All right. I bet we're going to come back to that a little bit. But in the meantime, let's go into how you have evolved to sort of embracing this technology and utilizing it in certain ways.
So yeah, it's been a very quick evolution, I will tell you.
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to kind of work it into as like a workflow. And you mentioned this over email earlier that we should talk about a workflow. But in the past, one of the big things I do is train people on blogging and content creation. And that's a big part of my course. And we spend a full hour on the phone just brainstorming. And in the past, before I started doing that, I thought, I should provide them a list. I should come up with a list of things they can blog about. But I very quickly figured out it's going to be unique to every photographer. And how do you generate one list or 10 lists that will, be helpful? And there are lists on the internet. They are provided by other SEO professionals. But coming up with a way to generate your own list is, I think, the heart of it, because we're always talking about what is my why and who is my ideal client. So figuring out, first of all, what are your goals for your business, because SEO is a long game. You're not using SEO to help you book your mini sessions tomorrow. That's what Instagram is for. You're looking to fill your calendar 6 months down the road or a year down the road. So what are your goals in your business and who is your ideal client? And those are sort of the overarching things of content creation. And Google would agree. Google's new helpful content system that they're pushing is, are you creating helpful content and do you have firsthand experience? So if we can kind of put all of those things together and say, that's going to help me, serve my ideal client. And that's what SEO is. It's good customer service. And I've been saying that long before they came out with their helpful content system, because it's one thing to get thousands of clicks on your website if they're from the wrong people. You want to get them from the right people. And you can get those clicks, but that is not going to get you hired. So what we want is the funnel, the smaller number of clicks. But every one of those clicks is the right client. So how do we do that? So I have this whole list of questions that I go through with my clients that help us come up with these pillars of content that will help us come up with ideas for blogging. But now we can use this extra tool. And really what it's doing is just sort of speeding up the process. And so what I found when I use it for myself, I'm like, well, I need to blog about photography and I need to blog about SEO. And I need to come up with a lot of ideas And so I'm going to sit down and do this brainstorming exercise, but I don't always have a couple of hours to sit down and do this brainstorming exercise. So I can then plug in some of these ideas in ChatGPT and say, generate me some blog post ideas. So, and they're not always good. And you do have to know how to word it, because the more you put in, the more you're going to get out. So if you just say, give me 5 ideas for blog posts for a photographer, you're going to get some pretty generic topics.
Right.
And they've all been written before 1,000 times.
Sure.
And those topics, you could write a 1,000-word blog post and keyword it and do all the right things. But 20,000 other photographers have already written those posts. And so are you going to rank for that? So just a quick example is you could say, give me 5 ideas for a family photographer. Or you could say, give me 5 ideas about spring session ideas for a family lifestyle photographer in Seattle. Just like, I want to think about my spring session ideas, my adventure sessions, or, whatever it is that you want to do. Maybe you're a newborn studio photographer. So as specific as you can be with the tool, it's going to give you back some ideas. And still a lot of them are not going to feel right to you, and you're not going to pursue those. But it is going to give you some ideas that you had not thought of, or give you kind of a new way to think about them.
Right. Well, if you think about pre-AI brainstorming exercises, a lot of times they focused on the whole like spaghetti at the wall strategy, where you're just brain dumping any idea that came to mind, good, bad, or otherwise. You're just like putting it out there. And, it might take 20 minutes, 30 minutes to sit there and just go, try and mine your brain for as much as possible. With ChatGPT, it can generate in 20 or 30 minutes. You could get thousands of ideas, and some of them are going to be good.
Seconds.
I know.
It's immediate, which it blows your mind when you get on there. And I've done it. I've said, write me a 1,000-word blog post on this, and it does it in like 20 seconds. It's amazing. And I'm like, I'm not going to use that, but you just did that.
Yeah.
But one of the cool things about ChatGPT is that it is a chat bot. Mm-hmm. So it's going to give you an answer, and you're going to say, actually, I wanted this, or could you refine this, or could you change the tone? And it will do it. Mm-hmm. And now this is early days, right? This is ChatGPT 3.5. This is the free version. They've already come out with a 4.0, which is a paid version. I have not delved into that yet. But it's going to be getting better and better and more refined. And it could even learn your voice and speak like you. Mm-hmm. So if you have generated enough content, it's going to figure that out. So this is going to become a paid thing very quickly. And I think they're just kind of giving us the free sample right now.
Well, you gotta get everybody hooked on the drug, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And that's great news, I think, for people who have been plugging away at organic SEO sort of strategies for a long time, blogging or writing newsletters or any of that sort of stuff. If you have been creating content like that, even probably something as small as longer format Instagram captions, if those sort of speak to your voice, you have those, and you will eventually have ways to take those and kind of teach a tool to help you become more prolific in your writing. Right. There is, the weird factor of that. I think I tried out, because I have all this podcast content, of course, my voice is out there in the world a lot. Yep. And so there's a tool, an AI tool that will edit podcasts for you, where you can go in and say like, oh, I said this sentence, but I wish I had said this sentence. So you type out the sentence you wish you had said, and it just says it in your voice, and you can sort of stitch it in. And I was like, nope, that's definitely too creepy for me.
Yeah.
Because it's a little too close to my voice. Yeah. And so brave new world out there. Again, glad I'm not in the regulatory industry, but it is for those of us who are using it for good, for, these sort of innocuous purposes. I think that it can be just a very easy, and it is pretty easy. The little bit that I've played with it, it is meant to be very user friendly, which is nice. And I think that that as a time saver, it can be lovely. So that's sort of the easy way to jump into it. What are the big like things that you don't want to do?
Well, I would definitely not copy and paste. And I know sometimes you might think, oh, this looks great. I can move a couple of adjectives around and this really does sound like me.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to think, where is this information coming from?
Right.
And they are grabbing this. They could be grabbing this from somebody who just wrote this yesterday. So you could be directly plagiarizing somebody, but really, moreover, I think you are running the risk of just writing repeat content.
Right.
So there used to be a thing, well, you could get away with it. It still exists. So scraping the internet is like where you're just taking somebody's content and rewording it for yourself.
Right.
And you're going to get more clicks. And that's something affiliate marketers use and people who are just trying to get a lot of clicks basically to make money. That's why they've come up with this helpful content system. They don't want that. They want for somebody who's using Google to get back an answer that's really helpful to them. And we all know we've done those searches where we're looking for something and we're getting not so helpful answers.
Right.
Like, no, that's not what I'm looking for. And even like when you're looking for a photographer, you might say, I'm looking for a family photographer, but you're not an educated searcher. Your client is not always an educated searcher. They're just saying photographer near me.
Yeah.
So, and also one thing I've always wanted to be able to do is say, I want to not have something. But because you have the words in there, they ignore the not and they give you the something that you're not looking for. So,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of, we all as searchers have to become more sophisticated about how to search. So I'm kind of going off on a tangent though.
I know. And then, and I agree with you. And yet my guess is that this is one of those things that AI will make better, where it's, the AI, artificial intelligence, is getting better and better at understanding our failings in communication and being able to bridge those gaps. So we'll see where that all goes. But in terms of, okay, so copying and pasting the draft that AI spits out for you, or even if you refine it, how are some ways other than like changing up the adjectives or switching the sentences around? Like, how do you go in and take a basic draft of that, let's say a blog post, and make it better in a way that doesn't then, take you back to spending just as much time as if you had sat down with a clean sheet of paper?
Well, I would say one way that it really has helped me speed up drafting a post is bullet pointing. Mm-hmm. So, before you even get to the paragraph phase, you need to come up with what are the points that I'm going to highlight. And usually, the meat of the article is like the easy part to write. The things that you want to cover, but maybe you only have 2 ideas and you want to add 3. So you could have it help you generate a 3rd idea. You could also have it help you with your intro or your outro. You could also have it help you with your meta description. I mean, there's so many different ways where as bloggers, we get bogged down and we're like, this is just too much work. And even if we know the rules of SEO, which a lot of people don't, the things that you're supposed to be putting in there, it's a chore to do those things.
Yeah.
So having it write you that meta description or the summary, like maybe as a blogger, you don't want to transcribe the whole podcast, but you want to summarize it on your blog. Sure. So like what you could say, you could transcribe the whole thing, put that entire text in, and then say, write me a summary.
Right.
And that I would think that would be completely legit. It's not, you're not saying these are my words. You're just trying to summarize your content. So there's a lot of just ways that I think it's super helpful that help you finish the job rather than do the entire job for you.
Well, and one of the things that we talk about all the time is repurposing content, right? So if you go to the trouble to think about, a story from a session that you had that really illustrates one of your core principles or philosophies as a photographer, and you write a blog post about that, that takes you hours, right? To come up with the idea, write it well, get it formatted, whatever. But then that should not be the only thing you do with that. Right. You should then be taking that. You should be putting little, parts of it, little pieces of it on Instagram. You should be sending out a newsletter that talks about that. And when you have that long form content, being able to put it into ChatGPT and say, give me, 5 days worth of Instagram captions, or,
Wow.
I need to write my audience a letter or a newsletter. And a strategy that I heard recently that I was like, "Ooh, that's interesting." And I haven't tried it yet, but I'd be curious to hear if you have either tried this or think it's a good idea, is one of the prompts that someone was describing, and I wish I remembered who it was. It was like somebody on the internet, um, was saying, I want you to write it, but I want you to write it from the point of view of and then you fill in your own kind of CV. So a
Hmm.
13-year family photographer based in North Carolina who specializes in working with toddlers or whatever.
Yes.
So basically it's not just the content that you wanted to spit out, but giving it a point of view that sort of directly mirrors your own. Have you played with that at all?
Yes. Yes. And I would say that's very helpful. And that's, you're going to get so much more response back from it if you give it more specific information.
Right.
Now, again, like the more specific information you give it, the more it's going to sound like a robot if you tell it to write the post for you.
Right.
Because it's going to start adding all these weird sentences about being a lifestyle family photographer when you're really just trying to talk about, the best kinds of diapers out
Right.
there or whatever, whatever helpful content you're trying to create for your client that maybe doesn't necessarily have anything to do with booking you as a photographer.
Mm-hmm.
So it gets a little muddled, but I would say try it. Just try it and see, and then ask it to refine it.
Sure.
But one of the things you mentioned made me think about keywording. So I talk a lot about keywording, and, we do our keyword research, which is like our overarching keywords that we want to rank for, our Durham family photographer or Seattle newborn photographer. And, you need to put those on your website. But blogging and content creation gives you an opportunity to be ranking for hundreds of or thousands of new keywords. And what is a keyword? It's just a question that someone's typing into the internet.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes I think we get a little bit lost when we write a blog post about incorporating our keyword, or we might have this idea, but we might not know what our keyword is.
Right.
So I did an experiment recently where I put in a blog post into ChatGPT and I said, tell me what my keyword is.
Oh,
and it told me what my keyword was. So then I'm like, okay, I need to put this keyword in my blog post title, in my images, in my tags, in my meta description, so that I'm really focusing that one post on that one keyword. And then I'm not going to reuse that keyword on the next post, because then I'm just competing with myself. Right. So how, if you're lost, it will help you. It will help you refine your message in a way.
Well, that's so helpful, because I think that it's like every time I sit down and open ChatGPT, I'm like, okay, we're going to use it to create, the ideas or the long form content or whatever. And I will say that thus far, 99% of the time, I kind of play with it for a little bit and then end up throwing my hands up and being like, whatever, I can do this better myself. And I know that that's really on me. It's not on it. But some of these strategies are so helpful, because I really do feel like it's almost like you really do have to think about it as like, I'm the chef. I'm going to make it do my prep for me. You go dice up all the onions, and then I will.
Totally stealing that.
It's
doing the prep work for you. That's
good.
Right. But you still have to make the dish.
Yeah.
That's a perfect analogy.
Well, you helped me come up with that, because again, I'm working through all of this in my own brain. So what else are we missing from this conversation that you want to share before we sign off for today? Because I feel like this is one of those that we could talk about for 1,000 years, but probably will be. But for today, if there were anything that you would send photographers home with, as far as like, give this a try.
Well, I'd say I think I said it already at the beginning, just keep reminding yourself why you're blogging. Yeah. You are trying to create useful content for your ideal client. You are trying to provide good customer service. So whatever you decide to blog about, you always have to have that in mind. It's just like whenever you think about what you're going to write in an Instagram caption, you're thinking about your ideal client and who you're trying to serve. So don't forget that. Don't forget that you're not here to get clicks. You're here to serve. So even if you only get one click, but it's the right client, versus 1,000 of the wrong client, that's better because that person is going to call you immediately and hire you, which is the goal, right?
Yeah.
So be mindful of, creating helpful content and then, as Google reminds us, putting it in first person. So we're talking about things we have actual experience of. We're not just going to write a blog post reviewing, 20 strollers that we've never even looked at before. It'll do that for you.
Right.
But, you want to make it personal and make it come from firsthand experience. So
absolutely.
That's what they're looking for, and that's what they're going to reward you for. So that's what you should be focusing on.
Absolutely. And, the thing is, I think when we're talking about SEO, we talk a lot about, we're doing this for Google. This is important for Google. But the fact of the matter is that humans are also getting a lot better or a lot more discriminating when it comes to clicking into an article and being like, oh, this is just someone who's an affiliate marketer or a professional blogger who's, getting pay-per-click or they're getting, it's clickbait for ad dollars. Like clickbait used to work really, really well for everyone. And I think that those numbers are going down and down because we're all like, oh yeah, I'm going to click on this thing about, you won't believe what so-and-so said about such and such, and it's going to be a bunch of garbage. And so always, as you are producing any kind of content, try and see it through that filter. If Google sees it as spam, that's bad. If a person clicks on it and sees it as spam, that's way worse as far as
it's
I'm
way
concerned.
worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you've already lost them. So
totally.
Yeah.
All that trust that we work so hard to build is down the tubes. Sarah, thank you so much. This has been super helpful. I would love for you to remind everybody where they can contact you, and if they are looking for SEO help, connect with you for that.
Yeah, well, they can find me on my website at sarahlanda.com, and I have a click in my navigation bar that says for photographers, so you can find my services there. On Instagram, I'm at Sarah Landa Photography. And that's about it. And I'm not as on Instagram as I am on my website. So I force myself. So I'm trying to get in there, but
I 1000% identify with that. Well, it's so great to see you. It's so great to chat with you. And we will have you back on again soon. And the world will have changed yet again. I have no doubt.
Exactly. We'll have all new rules at that point. So thanks for having me.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Well, that's it for this week's episode of This Can't Be That Hard. I'll be back same time, same place next week. In the meantime, you can find more information about this episode, along with all the relevant links, notes, and downloads at thiscan'tbethathard.com/learn. If you like the podcast, be sure to hit the subscribe button. Even better, share the love by leaving a review in iTunes. And as always, thanks so much for joining me. I hope you have a fantastic week.